Hello, my name is Isabella Johnston, and I am the Intern Whisperer, and I am sharing this week's tip of the week for all of our listeners. Why take personality assessments? It is important to know your personality type for professional reasons. Your personality type affects everything you do. So, yes, it is tied to your work, your career, and your future. Many employers encourage people to take personality tests, and when it's done in a positive, supportive way, it helps with that person's development. This is a good thing. You may have seen introverted personalities and extroverted personality types stereotyped as either deep thinking loners or extroverts as smooth talkers. But these stereotypes are misleading. That's because introversion and extroversion aren't really about social skills. They're really about how we get our energy and how we engage with our environment. So welcome, Renee. This is our guest this week is Renee Davenport. She is with the Age of Learning. I met her at the Future of Technology and Education. No, Future of Education Technology. That's it.
Yes, FETC.
Yes. It was my first time at the conference, and I was amazed. It's so much that was there. I am so delighted to have you as a guest on the show. So thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. It's nice to see you again.
Likewise. So we usually talk about education, innovation, where they intersect, the future of the industries, in this case, education, and also jobs. So we usually kick off our show where we ask the guests, tell us 5 words that describe you and why.
Sure. I think the first one I'll start off with is a learner. My entire life, I love learning. And so I consider myself a lifelong learner. And that's done me well across the years. I always want to know. I'm eager. And I think that's really contributed to me being able to have the career I have right now and transitioning. The other thing that is being positive. Always looking for the good in everything and, trying to turn lemons into lemonade. I know that sounds a little corny, but I really believe being positive really contributes to all things in your career and in your confidence and all of that. So, and change is inevitable. And having a positive attitude towards change really determines your ability to be successful because it will change whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Other thing for me is ethical. I really don't know that people think about that so much. Not that they're doing bad things, but I liking that to my professional brand. And for me, that tells my story. And I think if people thought about that more and how they were perceived, I think it might change some things, when you're in your workplace and really thinking about it from that perspective of what is your personal brand or your professional brand and what can you do to make that better or improve yourself. Always looking at that. Other is driven, very driven. And being a driven person means that you set goals. And so I'm very much a goal setter. I'm very much a person too that, I try to visualize where I want to be, what that might look like, what I want to learn. And so I'm a big believer in if you write it down, it'll happen. If you're always talking about things, a lot of times it'll be 10 years have gone by and you've really not done anything towards that goal. And so writing them down, having goals and really driving everything you do really makes a difference, gives you a lot of purpose and a path for what you want to do in life.
I like your word choices quite a bit. And did you used to be a public classroom teacher by chance?
I absolutely was. That's where I started my career. So education and teaching. Yes.
They are definitely embedded into who you are when you're describing that, because I can see, well, ethics, that's an obviously big, important part of being an educator. Continuous learning. When do we stop? That's what, those Wednesday, at least in Seminole County, it was like every week you have to go to some type of a continuing ed course, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And you also stressed a couple of other really good points that tie into what educators are, the heart of an educator. So the fact that you were driven, I think everybody in education is, that you don't do it for the money, right?
Nope, not at all. No, it's a very it's very self-gratifying. It's like an individual sport almost to some degree, even though you have your teaching mates and your community around you. You really take responsibility for each and every one of those young minds that are been entrusted to you. That's a huge responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always taken that very seriously
Mm-hmm.
in my career. And that's why, even though I've taken different roles, I'm still in education. That's my heart.
Yeah. And you also mentioned goals too, because I think in education, we are accustomed to working in quarters. So we
Mhm.
have 9 weeks, we have to accomplish whatever this is. And every week, you're always having to turn in something that's measurable. So education is key. And you transitioned right on over into sales. So I'm looking forward to, getting your thoughts and suggestions on how people can see that as a real career path, because to me, it's about relationships, but it's all good.
It is about relationships. What I found is I love teaching. I would not change it. I learned so much. It was over 11 years. But I also found too that I needed new challenges. And I think that's very important too, is really being self-aware. So being in the classroom, even though I love education, I always said that if I wasn't absolutely loving it, the kids would know. Kids are smart.
Mhm.
And so at that point, I started kind of exploring some different avenues professionally, and one of them was being what they call a content specialist. And so I started working for McGraw-Hill as a trainer for them. So basically, I have a background in everything, being an elementary teacher, but I really have been highly trained in reading. And so I had the pleasure of traveling all over the US and training teachers on our products and how to use them effectively. So that was huge. Even though I've taught in many different states and many different grade levels, you learn so much from every one of those. You know, when you would go around and take a little nugget and you just see how hard they were working. And so I really enjoyed that. And it's a hard job. You're in airports spending the night, you're in different locations all the time. And I learned a lot, but I also wanted to be in a little bit more control of what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I got kicked out of a book club one time because I kept having to cancel because, I wasn't there. I would get a call and they'd be like, oh, you need to go train and da, 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 da. So you'd have to drop everything and go. And what I also realized too is I worked with sales reps, and it was very strategic. Like everything we did, you had to learn the competition, you had to understand the processes. For me, it was another challenge. And so I took classes. I'm like, where can I take some sales classes? But I think the other thing that's really key too is I identified the reps that were very successful, that were very similar in mine, and I asked if I could ride with them.
That's
So
interesting.
I would go ride with them, and eventually built up what I called was a portfolio. And then when sales jobs would come open, I would apply for them. And it took twice for me to apply when I finally convinced them that I had the chops to be a sales rep. A lot of people think if you're in education, you can't transition, and that's true for some. But I think there's some that transition very well because you're able to use all your skills and you understand their needs, you understand the day to day, and you can actually use it to your benefit.
Yeah. And when you mentioned McGraw-Hill, I know that some of our listeners may not know that's a publishing company. And that's significant because that was before we had social content.
Yep.
And what is considered content is very, very different now.
Mhm.
So that's just so our listeners know where we are. McGraw-Hill, this is back when you and I were in school, and it's really not that long ago either, when people were not having all of their textbooks available online. We had real books that we touched, and the content was not only what is the syllabus, what is the material, any of the lesson plans that go with it, but everything that was supplemental to it. So that's what made up content for us in education.
Yeah, for a very long time,
Yeah.
on that one. What we have in terms of digital assets right now, I wonder sometimes I thought I was a pretty good teacher, but if I would have had what I have right now, resource wise, and all the kids I could have touched even more significantly, it's been a very exciting, I think, change, especially in the last few years.
Oh my goodness, yeah, because you can literally pull in the world into a classroom where even with augmented or virtual reality, make learning come alive so that people feel it even more so.
Absolutely. It's it's interesting. When I was teaching, my first teaching job was in Texas, and Galveston, Texas. And I can remember, being myself growing up in Southern Ohio and my family being in Kentucky. You travel a lot. You go to state, right? And you see all the different states. And I remember I was doing a little bit on geography, and the kids had never left the state. No one in my class had ever left the state.
Really?
But they didn't have to. They traveled a lot in Texas. They had beach, they had desert, they had mountains. And I can remember bringing in things that over the years that I had from going to different states. And it was just so wonderful to see their minds kind of open up and be like, Texas, there are other places. I'm like, yes, there are. Like we can go and we can be that. And so now with digital, you can actually take them there. You can take them on virtual field trips so they can actually really see. And I think that's super powerful to kind of bring the world into the classroom.
Okay. I totally agree with you. I tried to be an elementary school teacher because you just shared that you also did elementary ed. And when I was debating, I was an English major and I was going, oh no, it's going to be like English teacher. I'm going to go that route. And I went, you know what? I'm not sure. Maybe I want to be K through 12. I signed up to take only one early education course. And I went, this is nuts because it was every week I was supposed to turn in handmade things that I could use to decorate a room. And I went, when am I really teaching? Because this looks like the full-time job to decorate a room every month based on a month or a season or whatever. Because I went, no, let me go over to middle and high school because I'll take those hormones any day over this. So God bless you for doing that, because I'm sure that that's got to be a challenge. I don't even know how was anybody able to do that, because I think that a lot of that was before there was pre-made materials for us also.
No, trust me. I was told that I think my whole salary went to the teacher supply store, which it probably did on that one. But I taught first grade, third grade, fifth, and sixth. So I kind of did the gamut.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we moved a lot when with my ex-husband, and he was in the building industry. And so we went where the building booms were, and I always wanted to work. So I took whatever job was available. But in hindsight, it's the best thing I could have done because I could really see the different grade levels, like how they built upon each other. And some teachers teach the same grade level their entire life. I would highly recommend you not do that. There's a whole world out there of how you build upon for these kids. But I'm like you, I'm quite the opposite. I was teaching middle school and said, oh, please take me back to first or second grade. I've always been a believer in early education, and building that strong foundation from day one has always been super important.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we do it right from the beginning, we could maybe eliminate other issues as they go further down, when they start to get into the higher grades and the standardized testing comes into play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely understand what it is that you're saying there too. Many of the issues, though, I taught at risk, so my ability levels were at risk, standard, honors level, and then sometimes I wasn't certified for gifted, but I got to work with them in different ways, like the honors and the gifted kids. We put them together. So one of the benefits to me of working with that particular age is, they don't always like you, but when they like you, I think that you really got to experience it so much more with elementary school. They love their teachers and they're always so happy and they hug you and love you. But one of the benefits of working with the middle and the high schoolers is that they don't recognize that they're just kids in big bodies, just yet. But they also they love fiercely, and I can tell you they still have that childlike quality before they get released into the world,
Yep.
so to speak, where they go, no, I'm all about, my group and my people. And there's still a lot of kindness in them, even though we've seen a lot of bullying in the
Yeah.
world. But I've seen way more kindness from kids of all ages. And I have this little box of, I'm pretty sure you do, of notes and messages that kids have written or things they made you. Do you have that?
Oh, absolutely. I still have all the little, I have a box, of all the little Christmas gifts that we were given that mean, so much to me. And I like the handmade ones actually,
Mm-hmm.
more than anything. And you're right. When I taught middle school, I taught it for 2 years, and I like teaching in general as whole, but um, they really are still just kids,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they love discipline actually.
They do. They absolutely do. And when you come in and you sit here and say, hey, stop doing that right now. I remember middle schoolers, again, they would have fights in the hall because, again, I was teaching in the projects there. The boys, I could come out and say something and they would like break it up. The girls, not so much. Did you experience that too? Because those emotions are going crazy in their bodies.
They are, it's interesting. I too was at middle school. I was teaching at a very high risk school. It was very different than how I grew up. And one thing I noticed is, and it's kind of not a strange story, but the girls, because I was interested and I talked to them, they were almost my bodyguards for some of the other.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, because it was a very rough area. There were a lot of gangs, and I really cared. At night it was, I think one of the hardest things to teaching there was I was worried I was going to see them on the news. I really was, because it was that level. But I noticed with the girls, if any girl was going to give me a problem, there were several other girls like, don't mess with Miss D. She's okay. You know what I mean? And I think that's another thing too, of listening, not always lecturing, kind of listening. Being a better listener has served me well too, and kind of hearing what's going on.
So all of this is leading up to, I have a specific reason why I'm directing us in this conversation here, is my best lessons of how to work with in the corporate world came from teaching, because I knew when I went into a parent teacher conference, I better have my materials pulled together. I better know that that parent is coming in going, I'm coming for you, because
Yep.
my kid is perfect, and not all of them, but it was like I knew I had to have my back and be super organized and be ready to make my case and say, so let's talk about this. The art of persuasion, the art of negotiation. You learn so much as a teacher that I think does translate into the role that you have with the sales role that you have had in so many locations. So I think that it serves us well to be able to problem solve and do all kinds of things that are on the fly sometimes.
I agree with you 100%. I like to hire teachers. I do, because they have a love of learning
Mhm.
and all the other things that you talked about. Um, if long I can teach them, I can teach them the other things. I can't teach someone, though, 10 years of classroom experience, but I can teach you how to sell. I
Mhm.
can teach you how to do pipeline. I can teach you how to manage numbers. And I was very fortunate that I had a lot of people that mentored me when I said I want to do this. I think the other thing too is though I asked for help. A lot of people don't do that. I sought out people that I respected and I knew I could learn from, and asked them to teach me. And I think you're absolutely right. A lot of times I'll be in meetings and I have other educators with me, and we're like, I'm a good teacher. How can I do this? I know I can do this. Like I can, teach them this. And I always go back and go, adults are just big kids. Like
Mhm.
that's really what we are.
Exactly. Exactly.
We're just big kids. And my years in teaching and all those practices have really served me very well over the years.
Yeah. I get my best lessons. I teach Sunday school to 3-year-olds, and I love,
Oh.
I know, but that's like the whole end of the spectrum is the point. By working with the 3-year-olds, I sit here and I go, all right. So when they come into the room, they go, Miss Bella, they're so happy to see me. I went, gosh, if everybody was like that in the world, how much better would this be? And then they come up to you. They're really good. They're intense with their communication. I've seen them be very inclusive. They go, hey, here, you can play with this. But they also, have to navigate emotions. And I sit here and I go, man, that is what every adult wants. They want to be seen, heard, respected,
Yep.
accepted.
It's not difficult. If you really kind of stop and think, and I'm a big believer too, and treat people the way you want to be treated. If you just kind of keep those basic ideas and don't forget them, you'll be successful. You'll be able to achieve, all of those things and have the ethics, or your like, I always talk to people about their professional brand. What do you want that to be? Think about that. I don't know if people ever thought about that really. And I just think it's so important.
I've seen them teaching that more in colleges now, like in the Gen Z and millennial. There's been a focus on your personal brand. What is that? And how does that translate into the business world? So why don't you tell us more about what a brand is and how you've been able to explain that to others?
When I look at a brand, you kind of, and I think too, I also did marketing. So after my sales, I was offered an opportunity to move to Manhattan and be a part of a team building a new reading program. And I knew I needed to learn things. And so I went and took courses in pragmatic marketing and, all of those things. And I think that's really kind of opened my eyes too, when you're in sales, you think the world revolves around your little section of your sales territory, and what you need is more important than everyone else's. You kind of get in that mode.
Mhm.
But I did know I would need to learn the business, the broader business, and all of that. And so moving to New York, I learned so much. But that's where I really started looking at, when I was responsible for the brand of the company and the launch of this program, and what did the message need to be, what were the key components. I really always, that was huge for me. I started thinking about myself and what I wanted that to be. When people see me or talk to me, what is their impression of what I stand for, what I do every day, why I do it. And so for me, that brand is everything. It's kind of like your billboard.
Mhm.
um, for life, and the message that you want. When people talk about you, what's the first thing that comes out?
So where'd you go to school? College, I mean.
I am a graduate of Ohio University, which is in Athens, Ohio, not, as they say, the Ohio State. So
Right.
I just want
I
to be
know there's
clear.
rivalry there.
Not for me, but yeah. So I went to Ohio University. Loved it. Beautiful campus. Absolutely gorgeous. Um, Learned so much. It had one of the best teaching colleges, and I wanted to do that. Plus, I wanted to be away from home, but not too far away from home. So about a couple hours from my family
Mhm.
on that one. About
And
45 minutes from Columbus.
okay, I've never been to Ohio. I was born in Kansas, lived in Missouri, lived all over the US, but don't ever remember being in Ohio. So what did you major in?
I majored in elementary education and a minor in science. Mhm.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
funny because you said you really liked reading, but the minor was in science.
The minor was in science because I started my career at Wright State, which was very close to where I was at, and we had to take a lot of sciences. And so I have a brother and a sister, and we were all in college towards the end of my career. And we looked at my counselor, and I really wanted to go major in reading, but I had so much science. My dad was like, your minor's in science. So for me to graduate on time, just fine. I went back then and added to my reading curriculum. But I actually enjoy science very much. And I think a lot of teachers kind of shy away from it, but I really liked always incorporating it into my lessons. So that's a
How did
little
you do
story
that?
about the science.
Yeah, tell us how you did that. Because like yourself, I have a love of science too. And I don't know it anymore, but I memorized the periodical table. I loved astronomy. A lot of the courses that I would take as electives were, biology and astronomy and just any chemistry. I liked because they're all very hands-on normally.
They're all very hands-on, and there's not a lot of, there is more now, but especially in science with females, that's up and coming on that one. And so one thing, that I've always learned is to make sure that everyone believes they can do whatever they want to do. There,
Mhm.
for me, that's hugely important. And so, when you talked about doing the decorating the room or whatever, my room was always based on themes. Everything was thematic, and everything that we did from math, reading, science, social studies, all kind of wrapped around this theme so that they could make those real life connections. And that really was helpful to the kids when, why do we need to learn this? Well, because of this, this, and this, they all go together, in life. And so actually science is one of the easiest things to incorporate if you enjoy it. So, and the kids always love it.
I had a same love for art. Just about, I graduated first 2 years, University of Florida. I switched over to Rollins College here in Orlando, and it's a liberal studies school. So every elective I could possibly take was in art. So aside from science, it was art. At University of Florida, it was all science classes as any electives I could take. The art side, I definitely embraced that one. One of the things that I did in the classroom is, even though I wasn't doing like all cutting out the things, this is back in the day when people had newspapers too, which is not that long ago again. But anyway, I would go over to the newspaper, get a remnant roll of newspaper and put it up on the walls, and then let the kids draw, every one of my periods, that, first, second, third, all of those, they could have their own wall of art. But the rules were nothing that was profanity, no slamming people, had to be positive, had to be encouraging. And, we had a lot of fun with it. But I also brought in how money equates to what we're doing in the classroom, because I took an in-service, and it was built around how economics can be integrated. So I'll save that for another time. But I think you and I have very similar, well, I don't know. I think all educators, we're all kind of like this. How do we
Very
make it
creative.
applicable, right?
You have to be creative, and I don't want to say trick them, but a lot of times it's best that they don't
We
even
have to
realize
hook
what they're
them.
learning. You got to hook them.
Yeah.
And then the learning becomes just organic,
Yeah.
and they don't even realize they're learning. And that's how you build that love of learning and make it a positive experience from early on. And so making the room theirs, that's huge. You know what I mean? This is our room. This is our community. How are we going to make this the best community ever? Giving responsibility. Kids can do a lot more than what people think they can do. And if you give them the opportunity to do that, they'll just grow.
And I'm going to push that needle forward, because now we work with adults, and you were in adult training also. So if we help our adult learners tap into, okay, let's get that little creative 3, 5, whatever it is, 10-year-old out of you, and then they can still set the whole world on fire. The passion is there, but it's kind of like we've been, oh, well, this is how I'm supposed to be working in the workplace. So we kind of put ourselves in the box, I think, ourselves, rather than let us think outside of the box. It's, I know, an antiquated phrase, but
No, I'm a huge believer in that. And not so much out of the box, but I find that a lot of times when I went into leadership roles, I really kind of looked at what do good leaders do? You know what I mean? And from that, and when, one is, lead by example, which really goes back to that personal brand again. But the other thing that I realized very quickly is, and you have to be confident to be able to do this, but you surround yourself with people that know things that you don't know as well, or that think differently. And so by doing that and bringing in a team and bringing in everyone for not a specific reason, but for a talent or something that they do that the entire team can utilize, that's really opening up that box. And that really creates what I consider a team, because they're all contributing in their own way, but everyone's benefiting. I joke and tell everybody, you don't want 20 of me running around, because the outcomes won't change. I'm really interested in looking at things differently, creating different paths. Just because you did it that way forever doesn't mean it's the right way to do it now. Let's, like you did, think outside the box, be creative. What if I told you you had no restrictions? What would be how you would, as I'm building a sales team right now, it's been a lot of fun, but with my directors, building an inside sales team, how'd you do it in the past? How'd that work? Well, not so much here, not so much there. What would you change? Well, maybe this or maybe that. Build me a team that you think how it would work if you're designing it. And then let's talk through that. And so that's a big piece too, is really not putting a lot of guardrails around them, really encouraging the outside the box.
Mm-hmm. I had this one assistant principal, and what you're describing reminds me of Dee Schumacher. She was this assistant principal, and she always thought differently. She could walk into anybody's room and go, well, and the kids are hanging from the ceiling or something's going on. It's like chaos. It looks like she goes, now this is an interesting learning methodology. Can you tell me what's going on in here?
Yep.
Now, really, maybe she was going, this looks like chaos, but
Yep.
I'm going to give you the benefit, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And there might be, you know what I mean? When I was teaching, I never had a desk in my classroom. Like I didn't need a desk because I was never at my desk. And so I wanted that space for the kids. So everything was put into groupings, collaborative, and I was always working, around the room. And so that was a little different. And, people would come in and be like, where's your desk? I don't need a desk. Do you know what I mean? And my room was never quiet,
Mm-hmm.
but it also wasn't
Even
chaotic.
during exams, like you gave them a test, it was quiet then, right?
Yeah, when we're trying to do an assessment or something, but on day-to-day, everyday activity, you would hear talking, but it would be educational talking. They would be supporting each other. Learning was taking place. I really hated to go in a room where the desks were in rows and you couldn't look, or you know what I mean, and you had that was not my style, on that one. And so really kind of teaching them to be a self-starter and self-sufficient and self-manage. They only do that if they're given the opportunity to do it.
Oh, yeah, that's really, really valuable, especially when you have different, as you well know, different ability levels. It's still a full spectrum. You'd have the at risk, you'd have standard level, and then honors. I mean, that was how we segmented, right? And
Mhm.
even still, and I'd love to hear your most favorite success story. I had this one student, first gen, he was from India over here. He said, I need to get out of this class. He was in basic. He said, to be able to move up into honors. And I said, well, I can't skip you to honors, but I tell you what, if you make an A this semester, I'll sign off for you to be able to move up to the next level. And sure enough, he did an A first semester, or the semester, he did A first quarter, A second quarter. I signed off. He really wanted to transfer out. So I'm going to let him. And,
Yeah.
because a teacher's approval is everything, that's, you well know. So he got to move up to standard. He finished that for the rest of the semester. The next year he moved up into honors level, and he came to me at graduation and said, hey, because of you gave me that chance, I'm graduating with honors and I am the first gen going to college. And those are the stories that you love to hear. I'm sure you have some great stories too. What's your favorite one?
I do have several. I think one that is really special to me is when I was teaching third grade. And, that's such a big grade for them. They have their standardized testing for the first time. And to be honest, too, at the time, the way the educational system was kind of scored, not only say scored, or the children were assessed, they might have been getting E's, which were excellent, and then you get to third grade and you actually start doing this standardized test and I can't read on grade level kind of
Mhm.
thing. And so I had a girl student that was like that, sweet as she could be. And I worked extra after school, tutoring for free. There were several kids actually, but the reason why she stood out was she stayed in contact with me through all the years, and she is now an educator.
That is so rewarding.
I am still, I'm on LinkedIn with her, and she really contributes. And I was friends with her first grade teacher, and myself, of if you go the extra mile, just a little bit, it makes such a huge difference. And she always wanted to pay that forward. And she sends me pictures. She's an amazing teacher. And I think it's, you don't realize how impact. I always wanted to, I understood, but it's not until you get a story like that, or the kids still find you and tell you, hey, I'm so and so now doing whatever I want to do. And I think, again, it goes back to the personal brand again. If you really think about the impact you can have, you don't think it's a lot, it may be just enough to make a difference in that life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. I love the fact that you keep pulling us back to this personal brand, because it can have different, the word can change over whatever generations, whatever you want to call it, but it's what you're really describing is that you need to care about people. And it doesn't matter. That should be part of everybody's personal brand, is like, I'm a spiritual person, in my relationship with God. And I believe that we are all here on earth to be in a relationship with one another, to support each other and encourage each other. And I feel like if we remember those things, those, again, it goes back to like those 5 words that describe you. That's always the core of a person and how they see themselves. I feel like it's really insightful with what they value in life. It does lead back to, people, and positivity is what I've seen. I ask that question so much every time, every week, and it's always a very positive experience. I find it.
I agree 100%. I think karma is a real thing,
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
And so, and words matter. Words matter. Actions matter. And so, when you're much younger, and a lot of this comes with age, unfortunately, everyone,
Yes, it does.
where you really look at the big picture and you think about, I don't have to win every battle. You know what? These are the things that really are important and I care about. I will stand up for those. But there are other things you just, try to be a little more flexible, and work it out. But all those things come with time, unfortunately, you know what I mean, on that one. But if you're able to do that and really just honestly just wake up every day and try to help people, actually, that's a big thing, with mentoring is paying it forward. I've been very fortunate and I know that I worked hard, but I also, people gave me a chance, and I'm really, I like doing that, and giving people a chance. I can give you the tools, but it's kind of up to you to take it to where you want it to go. And if you just kind of do that and give a little bit, it's so empowering across the board.
When I met you at the conference,
Mhm.
you're with Age of Learning. First off, what drew me to that particular room that you guys had for the event was it was all like elementary school. It was primary colors. There was lots of, interaction and everything. And the signage outside just drew me. And I went, I don't know what this is, but I want to know more. And then I also love the name itself, Age of Learning, because I think it speaks to, we're always learning, just like you said at the very beginning when you were describing yourself. We all need to be continuous learners.
Yep.
Life is moving like this. I don't think there is a separation between work and there is no work balance or home life balance anymore. It's like, I believe there's even going to be a place where we go back into the work office because I want to get away from being at home.
Yeah.
I'm not meaning to be like random all over the place, but tell us about Age of Learning and why you chose that company, because I was so impressed with it and I loved every piece of marketing. I brought it back and I went, I want to do this in my company. This company is brilliant.
I'm again very fortunate. I understand, things. You talked about, I have been with, larger companies. I've been with, McGraw-Hill, and I've been with Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, two of the largest educational, companies for, I mean, HMH over 100 years, basically on that one. And I learned a lot in each one of those. I really learned the business at McGraw-Hill. I really honed in on my leadership skills at HMH because of the positions I took. But after doing that for so many years, I really wanted, to be in an environment that had the same beliefs that I did and was very mission driven. And so when Age of Learning reached out to me, that, they're ABC Mouse. If you don't know that, they're the creators of ABC Mouse. But they had been working on a mastery approach to learning, which really is being child-centered, which speaks to me and what I believe. And they had been in research and development over 5 years. And they want to get this out into what we would call the pre-K-12 market, which is what I've been doing for many, many years. And met with the company. They, said it's amazing. It's got all this technology, and I've been doing this so long. There's degrees of adaptive technology. I had a lot of questions, and they opened up everything to me and showed me all the work and the research and the thoughtfulness that they had put in to these products or these programs or resources that were completely focused on pre-K through second grade. Now we have plans to grow, but no company now, really, a lot of these companies, they do not focus on the early ed. They wait until third grade when you have that aha moment, right? Where I'm behind grade level, and they create programs. Our philosophy is, and the mission really spoke to me, is helping children everywhere build a strong foundation for academic success and a lifelong love of learning.
I love that, because here's the thing. I know you're absolutely right. The company is absolutely right. We know way too much as educators, and that research supports that the most adaptive learning time is, birth to 5, 6 years old. And if you're putting all of that good energy into teaching good values, things that truly matter, and in developing that love of learning, it becomes something that does carry over into third grade. I think that even still, that educators in those formative years can probably, I don't know if there's research on this or not, but be able to even break some of the environmental factors that can be, hurting a child, like if they come from poverty or some bad parenting. And I don't mean it in that way. I mean, just like unfortunate situations. So I don't know if you have that kind of research, but I would love to see that kind of a study that's out there that really is demonstrating that, this super supportive, nurturing role in education can even overcome some of the environmental factors of a child's life.
I don't know that we have anything specific on environment, but one thing that I really love about the company too is just our whole approach to the child and being what we call child-centered. And so I think I spoke to you about this a little bit. A lot of the programs over the years, state standards kind of drove, or Common Core standards. And you would look at the standards and you would build programs based on that standard. Standards aren't bad, but they're not perfect. And if you step back and take an approach of what does the child need? What is appropriate from a cognitive level, right? Developmentally, to actually build the strong foundation. Our approach that we've done actually at times covers more than the standard, because we know it's necessary to build the foundation. That approach was very interesting and different to me. And so by doing this, by coming over to the program, I was so excited to be excited about a program. But then the other aspect is exactly what you're saying. So when we're talking about the whole child, and we do have research on, we have thought papers on this. We are wonderful scientists that I get the pleasure of working with, and researchers have developed something they call the personalized mastery learning ecosystem. And we do have a lot of research on that. And really what that means is that the child's in the center, and we think about everything that needs to be around the child to support the child. And one of those really key elements for us that we take into consideration is the families and the caregivers of these children. What tools do we need to provide to them to support the child's learning, in addition to high quality resources and instruction, all based on research, learning sciences, all of those things together, working together and communicating. So we're really working. The other thing for me at Age of Learning is it's all technology. I really wanted to be in an ed tech space. And I think there's a lot of value that we have learned over the last few years from technology. I am still a firm believer, though, the technology is a tool. The teacher is the facilitator. The teacher is the child more than anyone. But if we can give that teacher tools to give them the information they need to continue to support that student, that's what we do at Age of Learning. That's what's different.
Yeah, that is beautiful too, because we know that as we continue to move into the future, that learning is becoming more customized, and that's where it should be, because even though we group people into ability levels or other categories that they fall into, demographics, it kind of is still taking us back to the old school days of one classroom where all of the other grades are, co-social learning, is definitely being present. You mentioned mentoring too, and I'm a big fan of peer and reverse mentoring, servant leadership. A lot of the things that I do in Employers for Change is all focused on that, and the ability to accelerate what the learning process is, breaking some of those cognitive behaviors that have been formed over years and coming in with a new mindset. I refer to it as multidimensional learning because it's still taking a holistic approach to the person, but there's a lot of dimensions when you get a little bit older and you have to break through some of those walls. It's a little bit
No, yeah. If you aren't given a foundation, which is what we're trying to do, that really builds your self-confidence as a learner, that's hugely important. And that's one reason why we started with math first. We know that there's a lot of this apprehension around math.
oh
I'm not a math person. I'm
yeah.
not this. Anyone can be a mathematician.
Mm-hmm.
They just need the skills and the confidence to know they can be a mathematician. And then all of that transfers into all other, kind of learning that they're doing. And if you build that confidence from the get-go, I mean, my dream would be, I know it's kind of far-fetched, but I mean, if we build the strong foundation, we could eliminate intervention. Wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
that be a beautiful thing?
Yes, it would
You
be.
know, on that one. And so, that's what we're striving for. What I get up every day and do, and I love what I do. And I love, I really believe this product can make a huge difference
Mm-hmm.
across the United States and in other places.
I was impressed with it also when, and I read through all of the marketing material that, I walked out of your room. It wasn't a booth. It was a giant room,
Yep.
so at the convention center. And I went, wow, this is really good stuff that's in here. The white papers, the research that was behind it, it definitely all had rigor there. What I believe that can happen is through that approach. I love that math is the key thing because I work with so many adults too. And I said, so let's talk about English teacher. And I convinced myself I was bad at math. And my dad was a math wizard,
Yeah.
and it was really intimidating, I'm going to tell you. So over on this side of me, I used to say, no, I'm not good at math. But I switched my thinking here in the past, I don't know, 10 years now. And I
Yeah.
said, oh, I am great at math. And now I sit here and I can do percentages and fractions. And I'm going, oh, right. So you are absolutely right. Anybody can do this, but it does require that you believe that, yes, that you can do it. You can't just say, no, yes, I can do this.
Yep. It's definitely a growth mindset, which is what we really try to strive for, with the students. And, I'm like you, I kind of coined myself, I love literature and reading and the arts and everything. But then I find myself in what I do now, I am doing numbers all day long.
Oh, yeah. You're in sales. You're supposed to.
I'm in sales and I'm doing numbers. And now I also have a love for that. Like, how can I forecast better? How can I do this better? What if I looked at it from this perspective? How can I, increase my attachment rate? Like all these things. If you, my parents would look at me and go like, we don't even know who you are anymore. But
Yeah.
it's like, we just see this person that just, kind of blossomed
Growing.
and yeah, growing. They really, and I did too. I thought I would go into teaching and I would retire a teacher. And it's just amazing when you're open and willing to take risks. I think that's another big thing too. Don't be afraid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that you are a teacher. You still are a teacher. And what you're doing is you're teaching at scale because you're able to take a product that reaches way more people than the 24 students we had in the classroom, and you multiply that by 5 or 6 times, however many times you had them. I know you were teaching all subjects over there in elementary, but as an English teacher, I would have 5, 6 sections, depending on how many periods in the day they gave me. And it would be like 200 students. Well, now I know I can reach way more people as my company so that, yeah, we're always teachers. I don't think we ever stop being the teacher.
I know I don't. I get teased a lot. We were doing a PD session somewhere or whatever, and we were talking about how, and this is a great example, if you go into the math standards, they don't teach counting backwards. Well, if you kind of liken that to a skill, it's why kids can't count back money. So have you ever been
My gosh, I never thought about that.
yeah,
That
so
is so
you see the
true.
connections.
Yeah.
So I cannot tell you how many times that I've been somewhere and the computer crashed. Well, I don't know how much change to give.
Mm-hmm.
Let me show you something. And their minds are blown when I teach them how to count back change.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, that's a really great trick. And I'm like, it's not a trick, it's math. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and so it's a joke. My daughter's always like, do you always feel like you have to teach somebody? I'm like, well, if the opportunity arises, it's called a teachable moment, and I'm going to grab it. I don't care where you are. Let me show you how to do that. And so it's a joke with my family, actually, that I feel like I need to teach everybody.
I don't know. I do it all the time too. And it doesn't bother me anymore. I just sit here and go, no, this is who I am. I'm okay with it now. And I'm good with it. I think that, that saying that those who can do and those that can't teach, I said, who thought that up? Because somebody had to teach that person. That's just like a slap in the face. I don't think that was a good quote, honestly.
It's not. And I think one of the positives, as you know, I'm always looking for the positive. I think one thing that COVID really bubbled up is how hard it is to be an educator.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep.
And I'm hopeful. We're we're in a shortage. We're in a crisis situation in the United States right now with educators. I mean, I was reading an article where New Mexico actually had to bring in National Guard to teach classes. They didn't have enough people to teach the classes.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's one of the most important professions that we have. I'm hopeful in the future that it'll be a more respected profession. It'll be a profession that you can do and be able to take care of your family. That's another thing, when you're looking at, pay. But part of what I want to do, what I do now is giving them the tools that enable them to be able to reach as many kids. I mean, what's interesting about the company I'm with now is, yes, I have to report up sales and numbers, but it's asked in a way of how many kids did you reach today, Renee?
Mm.
Which is very different. And it's very refreshing for me to kind of be with an organization that really, in my mind, walks the walk
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
what we do every day, from our commercial business to our schools business to our foundation that's actually works and does philanthropy all over the world. We're partnered with UNICEF. And so it's really at the stage of my career, being able to be at a place where we have a shared vision, which I think is really nice.
That is so true. I can support that. We're going to take just a few minutes to acknowledge our sponsor, Cat 5 Studios.
The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Cat 5 Studios, who help you create games and videos for your training and marketing needs that are out of this world. Visit Cat 5 Studios for more information to learn how Cat 5 Studios can help your business. Thank you, Cat 5 Studios.
So here we are back to our show. This part of the show is all about the future of jobs in our industry and 2030. So Renee, this is just an open dialogue, to be honest.
Okay.
None of us have the crystal ball. We're not able to sit here and go, oh, yeah, that's what it's going to be like. But we do know what we have now access to, which is automations that are just like off the whatever the cuff. It's crazy. And then we also have robots and augmented reality and virtual reality. Personally, I think holograms are going to be coming into vogue at some point in time. Think Star Treks. So, like, what is it that you think the future of education will look like, and potentially jobs? Because we were talking about teachers and how COVID has had an impact. Personally, when I go and look at the research, it says that HR and education are the top 10 career paths, even with COVID, because people are having to sit here and figure this out. And while some will be frustrated with it and with the certainly the pay grade, but also now this remote distance learning, it's a challenge. But I have a lot of faith in our profession. I believe that they're going to figure this out, how to make this feel, and that's the key verb there, feel like it is very relational.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I agree. I think when you look at the last 2 years, for me, I appreciate change. I think with change, there comes growth on that one. And in education, we needed, this type of growth or push. I've been in doing this for, I've been in the business over 25 years from a teaching or whatever, and all over the US. And, everyone is there trying to do their best. But, when you have all these beautiful digital resources, yet still in the US, you have rural areas with no internet. The children didn't have any devices. And that's the world we live in. And so from COVID, it really forced us to invest, which is what we needed to do. We needed to invest in our educational system. We needed to invest in our children. And so a lot more infrastructure has been built. Devices have been purchased. Now we need to focus on quality resources, which is one reason why I'm with Age of Learning, but also teaching teachers differently on how that can look. It's not one size fits all anymore. It shouldn't be. It doesn't have to be a brick and mortar. It can be a combination. And I think that's going to give us great flexibility in the workplace and from, bringing in talent of different areas. I think that's one thing that intrigued me about Age of Learning is they went to get the best of the best. And so taking what we do and working with people who build the games, like you're talking about, in virtual environments, and translating that, fascinating. But that's how we have student engagement. That's what we've got to do. And so I see potential. I see everything that you spoke about as a tool, never to replace. I completely don't, there still needs to be an education, the collaboration, the facilitator, whatever that's looking like from that educator. But if we can empower them with the tools to do their job better, that's our responsibility.
I agree. I think that I've seen some things with robots. I don't see robots taking anybody's place in the world. I feel like it's like you were saying, it's a supplemental, it's a tool. The same applies for AI. I don't think that there's going to be some great whatever machine that is out there that is taking away from teachers. Again, all of those things are invented by people. Science fiction, the beauty of science fiction is that it creates this place of, well, can we have that? And then a lot of those things end up coming into fruition in life. I think that COVID, as we've been talking about it, probably has helped parents to be way more appreciative of the teachers. And sit here and go, oh, they are not babysitters. This is hard what they do. So hopefully we could see that even increase salaries for teachers. It is usually based on taxes, whatever your tax base is, but there's got to be ways to improve those things.
I agree 100%. I think, now with parents, if they had an option of virtual, or they're like, no, we want them in school. Do you know what I mean? Kind of thing like that. But, one thing too is it's really important from a social emotional aspect of our children right now. So what we're seeing right now too is of children with, I never want to say learning loss, because it was never had. It's learning opportunity. And so you're seeing teachers are facing a lot of challenges now. They have kids coming in that have never been in a preschool environment or a school environment. They don't know how to interact. And so in addition to trying to teach them the skills, they're also trying to teach them social emotional interaction skills, collaboration, all these things. So the job is big. It's a big job on here. And so giving them the tools to be able to help that is something that, we at Age of Learning are committed to and continuing to, doing to support them. But I think, like you said, pandemic never good, but I think it really pushed us to think outside the box, like we talked about. Previously in a pre-K, technology was a no-no. Now they're seeing the value using it as a tool, not a replacement, but it has to be in concert with everything else they're doing, with all the tactile things that they do, which really supports the learning.
So how can people, our listeners, reach out to you? We supply everybody the LinkedIn profile for sure. So we've got that in there, but we also gave the website. Is there anything else that you would like people to reach out to you or Age of Learning?
You can go to our website, Age of Learning has our own LinkedIn also. You can just actually put in Age of Learning, it pops right up. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can actually find me on our pages. I'm listed under the Vice President of Sales. Love to hear from you. Again, we're always looking for talent and people that have our common goals.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you, Renee. And before we say goodbye, I also want to say thank you to our sponsor, Cat 5 Studios, our production team, video interns, Chase McDowell, David Ullman, Efren Jueves, and Acacia Perez. Our music is by Sophie Lloyd and sound effects by Eric Peterson, Matt Miller, Dave Francis, and Miguel Sintra. Visit employers the number 4 change at www.e4c.tech to learn how you can create real diversity and inclusion culture while scaling your people for the future. Renee, thank you so much. This has been delightful.
Thank you too. And it was great talking and seeing you again.
Oh, yeah. The feeling is so mutual.